Welcome back. I have another podcast episode here for you. As you know, I'm a big nerd. I'm into all things nerdy and cool, because nerdy stuff is the best. One of my favorites, Star Trek. Specific, Star Trek The Next Generation. So good. Classic. I've actually been rewatching it. I forgot how rough that first season really was. It took a while for that show to get traction. I went through the first season and it didn't age well. But this happens when stuff gets old. Time goes by, things like that. Usually with these shows, it takes the first season, 2 seasons to catch on. And then it kind of finds its own direction from there and just... The later seasons, fantastic. I hadn't gone back and rewatched the first little bit for a while, so I've been powering through that, putting on an episode or two before I go to sleep at night, and it's a little bumpy, for sure. So specific with this video, I'm going to go through and I'm going to cover the Star Trek films, maybe separately, maybe just in groups, because there was several main groups of these Star Trek films. So there was the original 6, which followed the original cast, Captain Kirk and all that, crew of the original Enterprise. Fantastic films. Some of them were better than others, for sure. My 2 picks out of that whole group of 6 films would be Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, obviously, one of my favorite movies, and Star Trek VI. Christopher Plummer played General Chang. Very good, very good. Highly recommend those 2. The other ones, they were kind of touch and go. Especially Star Trek The Motion Picture and Star Trek 3 were 2 of my least favorites. And Star Trek 5, I rewatched that one a while ago. It was kind of up and down. The other side of the coin, you've got the Star Trek The Next Generation films. There was a series of a few of those. And they were fantastic. For the most part, they were the most consistent shot of Star Trek films, I think. J.J. Abrams, Kelvin Timeline Universe movies weren't my cup of tea. I'll do a separate video on those. Sorry. I'm not even going to touch it. This video is specific about Star Trek The Next Generation films. You had Star Trek Generations, which was Star Trek 7, which was a really good film. You had Star Trek First Contact, which was also extremely well received, and it was a great film. Great, loved it. Star Trek Insurrection, and it looked good. It was a good looking film, but it was very, very short at certain points. It hit a few bumpy parts in the road, for sure. And Star Trek Nemesis, I get roasted on the Star Trek groups that I'm in on Facebook for my opinion on it. I am the guy that has a generally unpopular opinion with other nerds, but I have the ability to back it up and the reasons why. Star Trek Nemesis, one of my favorite Star Trek films, and I will get into why later in this video. It wasn't really that bad, people. There was some bad points to it, yes, but the overall thing about it was fantastic. It added to the lore quite a bit. Ha! Star Trek pun. Lore. Get it? You might not, if you don't know Star Trek that well. Lore. Data's brother. Yeah. I'll get into that in another video. It's funny. So I'm going to do a one-off for each film. Just kind of do a plot synopsis, what I liked about them. Star Trek 7, Star Trek Generations. It was a fitting follow-up to the TV series, and it was fantastic. The villain, Tolian Saren, he's a pretty badass guy. He's nothing real crazy in the Star Trek universe for a bad guy, but he has an interesting backstory. He is a very interesting character, and Malcolm McDowell plays him, so it's like, that's pretty awesome. The story in that movie, you do get to see Captain Kirk. It does involve a fitting passing of the torch from the old Star Trek series to the Next Generation series for the movie series. You do get to see Captain Kirk and Captain Picard on screen interacting with each other. It's kind of a send-off for Kirk and his period in the Star Trek film universe to pass the torch in a fitting fashion, proper fashion, to Sir Patrick Stewart, who plays Jean-Luc Picard. In my opinion, one of the greatest Star Trek characters ever made. He was a fantastic captain. Very, very good character. If you haven't watched that Picard show, it's a show following all of this stuff that goes on a few years later, like 20 years later, after. I'll do a review on that show. I have mixed feelings about it. Absolutely loved the first episode, but there were issues as it proceeded to grow the wrong direction, in my opinion. So Star Trek Generations, great. It was a really good looking film. They did a really good job with it. Characters obviously were well fleshed out at this point, and it wasn't overly big on the action, but it was a strong story. It was a movie with a lot of heart, and it did tie in well with the television series. So it was a good jumping off point as the send-off for the old Star Trek cast, for good old Captain Kirk there to make his exit, and then the entry into the new, later timeline crew of the Enterprise D for the film. It did look good. The effects were good. Some of the effects they actually reused from earlier Star Trek films. That's right. You see a ship explode at some point in the film. If you want, message me and I'll let you know. I don't want to drop any spoilers too much on this. I want to let you guys experience it. But there is a ship explosion that was actually reused footage from Star Trek 3. I think it was Star Trek 3 that they reused the ship exploding. Same style ship and everything. It was crazy. Don't know why they did that. I'm sure they had the money to do so, but whatever. A lot of people didn't notice. I sure as hell did. But yeah, there was a few weak points with Star Trek Generations, but Malcolm McDowell was a good film. It had a lot to do with Picard. Guinan, one of my favorite characters from Star Trek The Next Generation. Whoopi Goldberg, fantastic actress. Played a part in that film, which was good because Guinan was one of my favorite side characters from Star Trek. She's great. All the time. One of my favorite characters. I hope she returns for Picard. So I can see her again. One of my favorites. But everybody did a really good job in that film. It was a little bumpy, but it was pretty damn good. The follow-up one was Star Trek First Contact. Now, the plot for Star Trek First Contact, the main antagonist is, I'm sure most Star Trek fans' favorite villain, the Borg. And I'm not big on time travel with my Star Trek. I don't like it. I would rather them go through space, not through time. I also don't appreciate the mirror universe crap when they're going back and forth, dimension hopping. Nah. Just give me a ship and they're flying out there and they're doing their thing and they're exploring space. They don't need to have the time travel crap. I never appreciated any time travel stuff with Star Trek. I am always a little harsh on it. And if I wasn't so harsh with the time travel thing, and I was a little more relaxed with it, I'd probably enjoy Star Trek First Contact that much more. But overall, I don't have any complaints. I don't like the time travel thing. It's stupid. It's a stupid device. They've reused it and reused it and reused it so many times in Star Trek. I don't appreciate it. I don't want to see any Star Trek time travel. I don't. Seriously, I don't care about it. So that was the complaint that I had for First Contact. It does involve the Borg and time travel, but they pulled it off. It was a good film. Very, very solid action scenes in it. The acting was good. Data and Picard, two of my favorite characters of the series, were like the main points of the film, which was good. They lean on it heavily. The action, fantastic. The effects for the Borg, fantastic. It was dark, and it was dark, but it wasn't gritty. It was very, very polished looking. I liked the look of the film. It was pretty nice. All in all, I'd say most people say First Contact is their favorite movie from the Star Trek Next Generation films. It has very, very good appeal to it. It's an action movie. It's a faithful Star Trek adaptation. It does have lots and lots of good character development and plot in it. I'd say it's the strongest one of the Star Trek The Next Generation films, just because overall it's an entertaining film for everybody. If you're not really a Star Trek person, you can get into it, sit back, watch it. You don't need to know a bunch of stuff that's going on. It's kind of self-explanatory. It does take care of that for you. It does hold your hand a little bit. And it's packed with action, packed with story. There's a lot of heart in that film as well. And it was good. The pacing was great. It looked great. I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. Okay. I rewatched this one the other night just to kind of see if I was being unnecessarily harsh. Okay? We're getting to the 9th Star Trek film in the series. Star Trek Insurrection. So, the intent with this movie, it was in a good place. It was trying to kind of politically stance itself a little bit, if that makes any sense. If you watch the film, it just seems a little preachy, seems a little pushy for my liking. The bad guy in the film, Adar Ruafo, he seems like a two-dimensional character. He really does. He is probably the weakest villain of any of these Star Trek The Next Generation films. Malcolm McDowell in Star Trek Generations didn't have too much screen time, but you gave a fuck. You were like, holy shit, what's this guy all about? He's an interesting character. Even though he's not on the screen a bunch. He doesn't present a huge physical problem for these guys, because he's not really physically formidable. You don't want to fight a Borg in a fist fight. You're gonna get assimilated. Ruafo was kind of tough, kind of not. I really didn't like the character. The acting was not that great for him, I don't think. They really made a two-dimensional character with him. They could have filled him out so much more, and they didn't. They did do a lot of character development with the main characters, the protagonists in the movie, but the bad guy kind of sucked. And it was very slow. It was dragging its feet quite a bit in some spots. And it got to the action scenes. They were very, very fast-paced. It'd be like dragging its feet for quite some time. And then all of a sudden, boom, something happens. Boom, 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 drags on. And it just continued. It was very clunky like that. The ending, they wrap it up relatively quick. It was, I'd say it's still better than most of the original cast films, but that's not saying much. These Next Generation movies kind of raised the bar a little bit from as the series went on. Okay, but Star Trek Insurrection, it's worth a watch. The thing about that is they did start to reveal that the Federation wasn't all big smiles and good guys like it was previously thought. They did actually start to sprinkle it in here that maybe there's a few bad apples in that equation that could spoil the whole bunch for the Federation. So it's interesting to watch that film. All right, this is the difficult one that people have a hard pill swallowing with this film. The final Next Generation film, Star Trek Nemesis. I saw Star Trek. I actually saw all of these films in the theater when they came out. I was that excited. I've been a lifelong Star Trek fan. I used to watch the original series on reruns when I was a little guy. About 3-4 years old. One of my first memories was watching the reruns of Star Trek, the original series. They were on at lunchtime on CBC because we got channels 2 and 4 because we lived out by Lloyd. So we didn't really have too many options. But Star Trek, the original series, I watched it as a little kid. Star Trek, the Next Generation came out. Deep Space Nine, Voyager, even Enterprise eventually as I was an adult. Watched that, mixed results on that one. I'll get to that one in a different video. But it's been there the whole time. I've been a big fan. I do agree that it has been messed with, and somebody needs to definitely course correct the franchise. It's very sad that it's gotten so screwed up. But this is the one that's out for debate with the nerds. Star Trek Nemesis. Sorry, I have a little bit of a stuffy nose. Okay, Nemesis. One of the first times that you see Tom Hardy acting in a film. I was talking to somebody and they had no idea that was Tom Hardy that played Shinzon of Remus in that film. Yeah, Tom Hardy, Bane, Tom Hardy, Mad Max, Tom Hardy, Venom, that Tom Hardy, big, beefy Tom Hardy. Not so beefy in this film. You won't even recognize him, some of you. He plays Shinzon of Remus, the bad guy. I'm not going to drop any spoilers in this film, but the dynamic between Shinzon and Picard is what makes the movie. There is an undercurrent of the meaning of humanity and what it means to be you in the film. So it does have a definite theme to it that carries throughout the entire film. There is a lot of action. There was a few bumpy spots. There was a couple slow spots, yes. The action was good. The film looked good. Some of the jokey stuff wasn't really hitting the way that it should. But I thought it was cool. They introduced the Remans in this film. You get to see some Romulans and stuff, which is cool. Especially if you're watching Picard now, or later seasons of the Next Generation, you'll know that Picard has an interesting relationship with the Romulans. And it does actually bleed over into Picard. And I wonder if they're going to touch on some of the points from Nemesis in the Picard series. Because it's an interesting situation that they get into concerning some Romulan shenanigans. Because those Romulans were always up to some shit. They were very, very sneaky. And Picard is one of the very interesting, important, somewhat, players in the whole grand scheme of things from the way that they do things. So they have a plan that they had that they abandoned, but then the plan comes back to take revenge upon the Romulans. And it kind of gets the Federation involved. Jean-Luc Picard gets involved. The crew of the Enterprise E gets involved. And it's a good action film. It's got Really good story, really good effects, and overall, a lot of people are unnecessarily harsh on the film. I understand the points that people are trying to make that they didn't like it. Some of the acting was pretty crappy. There was a female Romulan that was in it. She was fucking terrible. Denatra, that was the name of the character, I think. She was the female Romulan, and she has a few back and forths with Shinzon, and she couldn't act her way out of a paper bag. I'm sorry. She was terrible. Most of the bad acting in that movie was the Romulan people that they had. The rest of it was good, really good. Jonathan Frakes does a bang up job in that film. You've got Patrick Stewart. You've got Brent Spiner as Data. You've got a bunch of the old characters from the original series. They're like Star Trek The Next Generation, not the original series, reprising their roles. And it's good. They throw in a few new characters. They throw in a couple new gadgets. Actually, they've got this little rover thing that they use when they set down on this one planet to go find B4, which was another irritating point to me. But I'll do a video on the androids from the Star Trek universe separately. B4 was an irritating point for me. I will give you a bit of a spoiler, but it's not really a spoiler. So, Dr. Soong, who created Data, created Lore as well. So there was Data and Lore, the two brothers. So the way that the series went was there was Data, he was in Starfleet, he was, doing his thing, being Data. Fantastic character, by the way. He was like an updated and switched up version of Spock for the Next Generation. I like how they kind of had the same theme with him, but they switched it up completely to make a completely different character with a cool arc to him. And I really, really appreciate Data. He's cool. Good actor, good stories, great stuff. One of my favorite villains from Star Trek The Next Generation was Lore. Lore is like the evil Data. Twin brothers. And he had some really, really good points in the show. My regret with The Next Generation was they didn't use him nearly enough. I liked Lore. One of my favorite things about Star Trek The Next Generation was there was a part where they had the Borg, and they were a big threat. And then he comes back in an episode, and he had been leading some of the rogue Borg that had broken off from the Hive. And it's a pretty entertaining two-part story that you should check out. It's really, really good. Any of those Borg episodes, Star Trek The Next Generation, they were fantastic. They overused the Borg in Voyager, but whatever. For the TNG episodes, Lore, Borg, I'm in. You get a Q episode. Yeah, Q was a pretty good, entertaining character. He kept me interested as well. So, Lore and Data. Then they throw in B4. Pretty funny name, right? B4, because he was made before the other two. Yeah. He's pretty much just a prototype version. Really, really stupid and slow. And they have the film, he's a character in it, some shit happens, and he actually kind of ties into Picard, if you watch it. But I'm not going to mention too much that I get in spoiler territory, because I really want you guys to sit down and watch these movies, all of them, in a row, see what you think. But B4 was probably one of the weakest parts of the film, for me. I think they should have just kind of gotten away from him as much as they could and focused on the Picard Shinzon thing more. They could have leaned into that heavily. They did already, but they could have done more for sure. So, yeah, that's it. That's my plot synopsis of those films, Star Trek The Next Generation films. If you were a fan of The Next Generation, I am sure that you've seen these films already. You should I highly recommend you sit down, marathon, watch them. Maybe go, one a night over the week or something like that. Check them out. They're good. Generations was one of my favorites. It did have some weak points. I still love it. It was great. First Contact, definitely my favorite of those ones. Star Trek Insurrection, not as much. Least favorite of those 4 films, for sure. And Nemesis, it ties with Generations in my head as the second best, because First Contact was my favorite of those ones. But it was good stuff. It's good to have action in a Star Trek film. Don't be J.J. Abrams and try to make a Star Trek film an action film, though. It has to still be Star Trek at its core. What they did was they took a shoot-'em-up action movie and they dressed it badly as a Star Trek ripoff for those J.J. Abrams films. It was terrible. Sure, they were shiny, and sure, there was lots of lens flares. But those guys didn't get it. Those people that made Star Trek Discovery didn't get it. I thought those guys that were making Picard got it. I watched the first episode and I was like, woo, they're fixing it. Not as much. Now it's starting to let me down. The first episode was fantastic, but now it is already starting to piss me off. So that's unfortunate. I'm kind of a purist with that stuff. But I can go back and binge watch my Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Voyager. I kind of keep Enterprise at arm's length. I see what they were doing with it. I see how it fits into the canon, but it also sits between the end of the heyday of that franchise and the beginning of the bastardization of it, of the Kelvin timeline. It's kind of right there. They're almost touching at one point. They used too much time travel crap. They used too much mirror universe crap in Enterprise. Scott Bakula was fantastic as Captain Archer, but there was a lot of crap in that show that I didn't appreciate. But that's okay. This is my review on those 4 films. Check it out. Thanks for watching me for half an hour. I was only going to do a 10-minute video, but I get into this and I talk and I talk and I talk about stuff. So check out the films. Definitely very, very good. Alice Krige, I think, was the name of the lady that played the Borg Queen in Star Trek First Contact. She did an amazing job. She looked cool. The Borg Queen was a new character that they had rolled out for that film. It was a new concept. Didn't really make sense at first, but then they kind of explained it a little bit in Voyager and stuff like that, and it's like, okay, cool, I'll try this. It's good. So that's my Star Trek rant. I'll be doing a lot more Star Trek videos as well. It's one of my favorite things. Maybe I'll give you a point by point what to watch and what not to watch. Well, what to watch for each of the series. My personal favorite episodes, especially Star Trek The Next Generation. It's classic. It's part of my growing up, and it's special to me. And so are these films. For that reason, they tie well into the nostalgia and all the good feels from growing up. So that's about it for this video. Thanks for sitting and watching me or listening to me for a certain period of time. Sorry if I sound a little nasally. I was around a cat. I have cat allergies. So the cat dander has got me kind of going a little crazy. So it is what it is, I guess. Hopefully it didn't make my voice intolerable, but I am a little bit nasally today. I have the sniffles, but that's it. These things happen. If I'm going to keep cranking out these videos consistently, I got to just power through it like a champ, you know? So I am broadcasting from Lloydminster, Alberta, Saskatchewan, as always. Thank you very much to all my local people for supporting these videos. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. Make sure that if you're watching this video for the first time and you're not acquainted with my channel, check out my other videos. I do a bunch of videos on a bunch of different subjects, a lot of cool nerd stuff, and just stuff in general that you might enjoy. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Make sure to hit that little notification bell to stay up to date on my videos. Make sure to like, share it on your social media, Facebook and all that stuff. Share it with your friends and family. If you know a nerd that might appreciate hearing a fellow nerd discussing nerd stuff, please do them a favor and share this. They can reach out to me. They can comment under my videos. We can have a good chit chat back and forth. I'm a pretty approachable guy about this stuff. That's why I do these videos, so I can speak to a camera for half an hour. Speak to a camera and a mic, because I'm lonely and I don't have anybody to talk to about this in person. Just joking. I have friends. Most of them aren't big nerds though. And that hurts me. But that's okay. To each their own. But that's why I do these videos. Maybe I can spark a conversation, maybe give my opinion out here, and have a good back and forth with somebody that I don't even know on the internet, that we can have a good conversation. They can tell me something to enrich my knowledge base. Show me something that I haven't seen before or heard of that I can check out, that I might actually find to be something that I might enjoy. So that's what it is. It's a real exchange of knowledge, and I appreciate that. But thanks for watching my video. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share, and we'll see you next time on the next episode. Thank you very much for watching me rant about Star Trek for half an hour. I will be doing this quite frequently. Star Trek is one of my favorite things. So good. So good. Classic. Thank you, and have a great day.